I'm going to show here how to block pieces under tension, which I generally do with lace or anything where I really want to stretch something out, which generally is lace. So what I've got here is a piece that has been soaking, so it's thoroughly wet. I'm going to take an old towel, just gently squish out the water, and lay it out. And you'll notice I have lots of little yarn tails on my work here. That's on purpose because when we block under tension, we're stretching out the piece, and I would rather weave in my tail so it lays flat on the stretched out blocked piece, because if I were to weave in my ends when the piece is not yet blocked, then it might not actually stretch quite as much in those areas. So I like pushing on this a few times, try to get some of the water out. I tend to do this a little less when I'm blocking lace than when I'm blocking something like a sweater, because I don't want to get it quite as damp, because I need to be able to get all these pins, all these points rather, pinned out before I get to having it dry. So here we go. I'm going to just gently lay it out, not being fancy yet. Then I'm going to start pinning, and I usually start somewhere in the middle and work my way out to the edges, whatever the project is. So I'm going to pin this here, and I've got some connections. So I'm just going to try to pin the connection at a place where it feels really secure for all of the different pieces that are connected. And I'm going to go over here to the far side, and if your pattern has measurements, this is a great time to check that the measurements are good. I need 5.5 inches. I'm a little shy. So I'm just going to go in, instead of just pulling right on that point, I'm going to massage the whole thing and pull it out so I can get that 5.5 inches without straining and stressing any particular part. I'm going to do this whole star to start. And notice again, I'm not pulling right here. I want to kind of push out the extra and get it so that it is evenly distributed tension. Alright, so that guy's done. And then I'm going to move on here. Since I already have a pin on these 2 points, I'm going to start with the ones that are opposite them. And again, I can pull out my tape measure if I want to check. Chances are you'll find partway through you kind of get a feel for how much you're stretching that particular fabric. So you might find yourself measuring more at the beginning and less as you go ahead. Doesn't really matter exactly where you go, so you can feel your way and see what feels good, but I do like working center out. So I'm going to do one over on this side and go back and do one on the other side. And one of the reasons for working center out is you'll have less adjustments to make. So if I work on one end and go all the way to the far end and I want to fiddle with stuff, I probably have to fiddle with everything in the middle. But here, if I want to fiddle with something, it's probably just whatever's right next to where I've been. And feel free to adjust as you go, either to make it lay flat, or here I'm trying to pay attention to my connections to make sure that everything looks good. Yeah, so I'm at the point now where I'm getting it pretty consistently to the right size. I probably don't have to keep measuring if I don't want to. The other thing I keep an eye on for things like this where there's a line is I'm sort of eyeballing that this top row of pins is all parallel to each other. They're sort of in the same line. Some blocking mats have a grid, which can be helpful for that, but generally if you're kind of close to the edge on something rectangular like this, you can see it. And if you can't see it, you can always measure. So every single point is going to need to be pinned. So if you have something like a picot edge, you're going to have a whole lot of pins. These are a stainless steel T-pin. It's really important that you get stainless steel because you don't want to use something like a thumbtack that could end up rusting. Rust stains do not come out of fabric very easily or at all, so you might end up with something that is just messy or that you have to over dye with a reddish color to try to hide the rust. Now here you can see there's a little bit of a curling up happening. Things like that, I could put 2 more pins to hold that flat, or I can just kind of push it with my hands and that's probably going to be enough. Especially with this slightly grippy blocking mat, there's another curling. But if there's part that's really fussy and really wanting, if this kept wanting to roll up, I'll just stick a pin on it and not worry too much about it again. Now once I've got all this blocked, I'm just going to leave it until it is dry, which, depending on the density of your fabric and your temperature and kind of climate, if you're in a really arid area and it's a nice hot day, it might dry in a few hours. If you live in a cool, rainy place, it might be a day or two, but just leave it till it's totally dry. I like to check when it looks dry. You'll see the color changes a little bit. When it looks dry, I'll just test it by feeling the top, and if that seems dry, I'll sneak under and test feeling the bottom, because obviously the top dries a bit before the bottom. Now, if you don't have blocking mats like this, you can use, a spare mattress, a piece of cardboard with a towel over it works just fine. You just want something that is okay to get wet and that you will be able to pin into, because you really do need a surface that you can stick those pins in. All right, so this looks pretty good. I'm probably going to spend another minute or two just fussing. I tend to go through and adjust things, see if anything jumps out as looking like it's not aligned. Right here, got a little funny bit. Because as this dries, it's going to set the stitches where they are, so you want to make sure that you're pinning them out right where you want them to be.